Welcome to this video on academic writing tips. This video will provide you with some general technical academic writing tips, such as voice, tone, and language use. The first general tip is to always use active voice when writing. A sentence is considered to be in passive voice when the subject of a sentence is the object being acted on. Active voice, on the other hand, is where the subject is the one doing the acting. The general opinion is that passive voice makes writing flat and insinuates evasion of responsibility in writing. For example, instead of saying, the argument that technology in the classroom is not an indicator of student success is held by many scholars, rather say, Smith, Jones, and Mkhwanazi all argue that technology is not an indicator of student success. Not only is the latter sentence more concise, but it also forces you to state who the subject of the sentence is explicitly, and so makes your writing more rigorous. The second tip is to always use basic, simple English. The temptation is there, especially with inexperienced writers, to try and sound smart by using big words. However, one of your main goals is to make your research accessible, and using simple English is the best way to do that. You do need to, however, heed discipline-specific jargon, so it might be perfectly appropriate to use a word like epistemological in a philosophy paper, although this word is generally not well known in non-academic circles. A good guideline when writing is to write for a relatively intelligent 18-year-old, or your parents who do not have post-school education. If they can understand what you are writing, then that means your writing is clear and simple. This also forces you to define key terms, which you might not do if you are writing just for your professor. The third tip is to adopt a formal tone when writing. Inexperienced writers often write as if they are having a chat with their buddies. Academic writing is serious engagement with scholarly peers, and your tone ought to reflect that. That means you ought to avoid being too conversational when writing. For example, avoid asking and answering your own questions in your writing. Also avoid non-specific or vague terms like stuff or things. Always be as specific as possible. And lastly, avoid using contractions, as these will immediately make your tone more conversational and less formal. Often, with academic writing, you will be so immersed in your writing that you can no longer tell whether it is any good. When you reach that stage, there are 3 tips that I can share with you. The first is to read your writing out loud. By hearing it, you will often find mistakes that you overlooked when simply reading it. The second is to get a pair of fresh eyes on it. Ask someone else to read it and give you feedback. Finally, it is good to take a break. Leave your essay, and after a few days your eyes will be fresh again, and you will be able to spot inaccuracies and mistakes much easier. In conclusion, it is important to know that academic writing is a skill. No one is naturally a good academic writer. It takes years and years of practice to master it. A good way to practice your writing is to read as many academic texts as you can, and try emulate those until you have found your own voice. But in reality, the best way to write better is to keep rewriting. Even experienced writers have multiple drafts of a paper before it is submitted for publication. Your second draft will always be better than your first, your third draft always be better than your second, and so on. Thank you for listening to this video, and I hope it will help improve your academic writing. Happy writing!